Hi everyone, this is Isaiah.
Hi, I'm Steven.
And this is another episode of the single issue. Just to let you guys know, I cut out most of the penciling of this page just to slow down the pacing because the last few videos things were moving maybe a little bit too fast to accurately see. That said, though, I decided to keep in this section of penciling because I love drawing hugs. I just really like drawing hugs, and so I felt like I had to keep this one in here. And the reason why I like drawing hugs is that I've drawn a lot of things, people, punching each other and slashing each other with swords and stuff like that. But there's no other really complicated human interaction than figuring out how to make the whole hug thing work. And you got to tie in the emotion to that too. And so I just kind of find them fun to draw, and so any chance I get an opportunity to draw a hug in Trantaltown, I will write it into the story. Of course, it will fit the story, but that's just a little bit of what you're seeing here on camera. But Steven and I actually had something that we wanted to discuss today.
We want to discuss how to sell a scene, how to build up, tension and emotion into, whatever story you're writing, so when the payoff happens, you can just really sell it. Kind of like, just like whenever you're watching a show and something dramatic happens and time just stops. That's what we're showing you today. So, on the note of what you just got through saying about a hug being, difficult to really, put together. I think probably the only thing more difficult to put together is a kiss. It's just I've only drawn a person kissing another person maybe 3 times in my life.
It's also pretty fun to draw.
Yeah,
a lot of interacting anatomy and stuff like that. Really, 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 really fun thing to draw, right. Especially when a lot of times in comics you got a lot of people that are just standing right next to each other,
right.
Or you're drawing an action after it happens. Like if you're drawing an action scene or something like that,
right.
And someone's getting punched, you're not actually drawing the punch in action, so there's not actually any connecting anatomy that you're figuring out. You've got some guy who's already done the punch, and then you've got another
right.
guy who's already flying, and maybe there's some sort of effect there to show where the action took place.
Yeah.
But yeah, things where a lot of anatomy interact with each other is just really cool and really fun, and
right.
It can be a bit of a challenge. But that's getting back off the subject again. We wanted to talk about selling a scene, and I felt that this was a good page of Trantaltown to talk about that issue. Or I don't want to call it an issue or anything, but we are the single issue, so
right,
it's an issue.
Right.
But this is a scene where I had to really sell this emotional hug at the end. And I have to accomplish it in a single page. And we're going to see some of Steven's work, because Steven works at a different rate, at a different pace, whereas I'm more concerned about making a big scene on every single page, because I update just a page a week for Trantaltown. Steven works with several pages, and we can kind of see the difference on how the both of us sell scenes. And in this scene in particular, one of the things that I wanted to do was kind of slow down the pace a bit. So there's a shot here where we have a close-up of Veronica, and that's helping to slow the pace down a bit. And then Timmy and Norman are trying to kind of talk her down a bit, and then we have this large shot of her exclaiming and yelling at them, and then we have another shot of Alicia trying to console her before Veronica has this moment of emotional vulnerability, and she latches onto her friend here. And I have to do all of this within a page, and there's even a bit of time passing there too. So there's a lot of different things that I did in order to sell this scene. As I talked before, a lot of it had to do with pacing, but also the shot there of Veronica yelling, I made larger
right.
than most of the other panels there, to just kind of sell the emotion a little bit more, and to kind of make it feel very, very abrupt. And it reminded me of a scene from one of the scenes that I thought was just sold incredibly well in the Naruto manga. and I reference it to kind of pull this off. I don't think I pull it off nearly as well, especially since I'm not using several pages. I'm trying to get everything done in a single page.
Right.
But there's a sequence in Naruto, and I'll share it on the video, where Naruto just lost a friend, and he's being consoled by a few of his other friends, but there's this other person who kind of caused the whole situation to happen. And the whole pacing is very, very slow until you get to the point where Naruto has this outburst of anger, and all of a sudden you get this large 2-page spread of Naruto just yelling and saying, "Shut up." And I thought that was a very effective use of pacing, but also a very effective use of a spread to sell emotion. And that's one of the ways that you can sell a scene. But we're also going to look at a scene that Steven has set up here to talk about his process of selling a scene for Shane Longshadow's Hungry. This is a bit of a spoiler, too.
Yeah, in order for me to tell you what I'm doing here, I'm going to have to spoil a bit of it for you. So if you haven't read episode 11 yet, you probably want to turn the video off right now and come back to us when you've read it. But basically the scene that we're looking at right now takes place after the page after the one that we did for the video for the speed line. And, as everyone may recall, Shane, knocked Timothy Maroney, his opponent, on his ass with a roundhouse kick. So that's, Timothy Maroney picking himself back up and everything else. And, Maroney had, up until that point, been talking, smack the entire time. So what you see in the background is Shane, walking up behind him, basically just, saying something to the equivalent of, "You're a person that's just too comfortable in his own skill, and, and you need to get up so I can show you why comfortable is dangerous." So, Maroney is just like, "I hear you're good with the knife. Is this true?" And there's Shane down there in the corner, reaching into his back where he keeps his knife. So, let's talk about what Maroney just pulled out right there. It's like, I didn't want him to just have like a plain willy-nilly knife or whatever. I wanted that knife to look like dangerous. I mean, it looks like a freaking raptor's, talon or whatever. Like when the reader sees that, it's just like, oh, well, it's about to go down, So, so what's Shane gonna do? He's gonna pull out his own knife, and it's gonna look all sparkly and everything else, and it's just like all dynamic, and from there, it's just like the knife fight has been initiated. It just got real. So now,
I'm reminded a lot of and pulling a blank on his first name, but Obata, who does Death Note and Hikaru no Go and Bakuman, and his way of selling things that seem mundane, like a game of Go or writing something in a notebook, and these angles that he uses and the way that he shines light off of things just to give it much more emphasis. Looking at this page right here, and the previous page too, and the way that you brandish the knives really takes advantage of an angle and also the light shining off of Shane's light there. Really sells that something is about to happen.
Well, I think we've spoken about this before, but who my biggest influence is regarding this. I mean, Kentaro Miura. It's just like, if it wasn't for Berserk, I wouldn't have learned to manipulate light like this. I wouldn't have taken that kind of chance. Everything would just, I can't imagine what this book would have looked like if I had not, read Berserk. But that's a different thing altogether. So the knife fight has been initiated, and let's go ahead and go to the next page. So it's a double page spread of a huge knife fight. All those little bursts you see are knives clashing and everything else or whatever. And, Maroney is still talking shit. And, Shane is still just as focused and determined and everything else. And as you can see down there in the bottom corner, you know, he slashes Shane on his arm. Shane, you know, doesn't seem fazed by it, but, you know, to Maroney, that's everything. It's like, oh, I guess you're not as fast, you know. So on the next page, you know, that's they clash one more time, and Shane sees an opening, and you know, kicks Maroney in the stomach, pushing Maroney back, and Shane just pretty much just drops his guard. And Maroney sees that as an opportunity to move forward. So on the next page, his knife breaks, and his ribs are broken. And he's still running towards Shane. Shane moves out of the way and pretty much just karate chops him to the ground.
He used that whole X-ray shot.
Yeah. Now,
it was like popular in like movies in the 90s.
The thing about it is that, and I haven't really, you know, delved into this part, but like the art that Shane practices is called Angus's Fist. It's a art that has been passed down in his family from generation to generation to generation. It is the art of restraint without restraint. As a result, Shane can beat on somebody as long as he wants without killing them. Because essentially, the beatings that he puts on people, depending on how...
Steven.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're talking about selling a scene.
Oh, okay.
We'll have a link to your comment.
All right. So, anywho, you guys will learn about that eventually. So, all right. So, he karate chops Maroney, and at the bottom, the sun comes out. Mercy is like cloudy and like just dark all the time. So, the sun starts to come out for the first time in God knows how long. So, let's go to...
Well, before we move on, though, I really, really like shots like that. Not only do they serve to kind of slow down the pacing of a scene a bit whenever you want to slow things down, because sometimes that can be really dramatic, but also it really pulls the environment into the scene, and by light breaking in, you can also change the tone of the scene a lot. So if it was dark and murky before that, that helps the mood of this violent fight that's going on right now. But when that light starts to break, then you have this sense of hope, especially when we see our main character here, who is a hero, I'm assuming. I've read the comic.
I don't know that
it's kind of like anti-hero.
I think Shane's just there. You know? So
this is a hopeful moment. Breaking that light in really helps for the scene a lot. And we'll move on to the next page.
Okay, so in the top left corner, you see like people just shocked that the sun has come out, because I mean that doesn't happen around there. It's always gray and murky.
But they're also shocked about the situation that's going on right now.
I think they're all pretty much shocked. But this part coming up, this part right here, is really important, because anyone that's been reading the story so far knows about Shane and his father and what his father championed and everything else. And Shane has gone out of his way to let people know that he's not his father. And Timothy Maroney is looking up, suddenly realizing that fact right now, because he's worried that this is it for him.
And that angle that Steven's using here also really serves to sell the scene as well. We have this angle where the camera is the fictional camera, because it's a comic, is looking down on Maroney. Is this it?
Yeah, his last name is Maroney. Yeah,
it's looking down on Maroney, and we can kind of see a bit of Shane over the shoulder, but this gives Shane the sense of dominance over Maroney. I think that was a very, very good choice of angles, and also the second panel there too.
It's like, it's not just that he's looking down at him, but also on him. Like this is you're disappointing me right now. Which I also think sells the scene. So what you see in the middle panel right there, is him like just flashing back to the very moment Shane just kicked him. Because at first he didn't feel pain, feel like any kind of pain, but then all of a sudden he realized his ribs were broken. So, and then he looks up to see Shane right in front of him.
I'm going to guess that that's going to be conveyed in dialogue. That scene there that we're looking at as a flashback.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So, so like he's looking up at Shane, and he's in fear right now, and anyone that's reading it is going to be like, oh crap, is Shane going to do this or not? So.
And to talk more about selling the scene, it's the thing that we're talking about. We're not talking about Shane.
Yeah. Well.
The close up on the eye too, for especially this is something that Maroney is realizing. He's realizing that he's hurt now,
right? And
that close up to that shocked expression on the eye really helps that, because when I'm doing things with a scene too, I like to take advantage of facial expressions to show emotions and to show realizations. Because as people, we're very connected to faces, and you can show a lot just from someone's expression. So this extreme close-up, because I wouldn't have known that this was a flashback without any kind of dialogue, and at least that kick that's going on right there. But that close-up on the eye does tell me that there's some sort of intense realization that Maroney is having there in that moment.
This is where the scene kind of sort of just pays off. Like Shane's right there in front of him. He has his opponent at his mercy, and like he could just kill him right there and then. And he just walks away as though, he were nothing, And at the same time, while Maroney is just like, relieved that, Shane's not going to kill him, he's also incensed because he's walking away, But just the top two panels right there, you could just see the expression in the character's eyes. Like, you really don't know what he's going to do just from those two panels alone,
Yeah, especially the longer shot of Shane there, and then going to the close-up of the eyes, and once again using that close-up of expression to really sell what the character's feeling, because you can sense that anger, and you can
just
sense
fury.
that he's making a decision here in this moment. But also, going from that long shot to that extreme close-up, it's a really, really cool way of not only just making the pace seem a little slow, but drawing us in to that intense emotion that Shane is feeling there, but also that fear. Because that second shot especially, that first shot is really intimidating. And then that second shot there with a lot of the shadow covering up his face, and then you just see those eyes, and those eyes are very minimalistic and dark and terrifying. And that really helps kind of sell the fear that Maroney is having, but it also makes the audience feel it too.
Shadows in general, in art, if used correctly, it's just like a weapon. They build a mood all by themselves, It's funny because when I first did that, I hadn't really worked with shadows before, and I still wasn't convinced that I had done this correctly. But, I think just that alone just really freaking sold the scene.
Yeah, I think you sell that really well.
So.
And you got the day breaking behind him too.
So
there's like this glow.
I was so proud
contrasting
of that.
with that dark. That's really cool.
Yeah. So, but yeah. So that's the last page. Hopefully we didn't spoil too much for people. So yeah.
But yeah, that's selling a scene for you, and there's all sorts of different ways that you can go about your scene. One thing that I would emphasize a lot too is varying your camera angles, and that's for any scene that you're doing in a comic book, because that really helps make things look so much more interesting. I think that one of the greatest things that a cartoonist and a comic artist can be able to do is make a scene like a long conversation look really interesting. And one of the ways that you can do that is by picking your camera angles and changing your camera angles, and that's why I got all those shots that I talked about there when we were looking at Shane Longshadow is Hungry. A lot of shots that I felt really sold what was going on were the things where the camera was really being taken advantage of, and we got those extreme close-ups, or we had the camera looking down on characters. And I like to use I like to use Dutch angles a lot. And I kind of have like my own kind of sense of rules. Like I'll use a Dutch angle to kind of make a scene look more interesting, and it's usually slanted this way. And if I want to make something look really tense, it's usually slanted the other way. Okay. And that's just my own personal quirk that I feel really works for me.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask this because you know me. I'm not.
You don't know what a Dutch angle is.
I don't know what a Dutch angle is. Hey, I'm sure there are people watching that don't know what a Dutch angle is.
I should explain that. Okay. Yeah. A Dutch angle is basically when your camera is tilted slightly. And it adds a lot of tension to a scene. And it also adds a lot of it just kind of makes things look a little bit more intriguing. And I use that on just about every page of Transaltown I draw. If I change a camera angle, sometimes I'm like, tilt it a little bit. And that's what a Dutch angle is.
And now, anytime I use that angle in my drawings, I'm going to hear his voice in my head. I didn't even know what spot blacks were, until he said it. So now I know spot blacks and Dutch angles. So and now you do too. So.
Yep. And that's all we got the time for today. Hope you guys enjoyed this. If you like it, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And we'll check you guys out next time.
All right. Bye, guys.